Welcome to SMR Bitesize. Your thought for Thursday follows, but before that, if you like what we're doing, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and of course, subscribe to the channel. Every Thursday, we'll be getting to grips with an issue that divides, challenges, and in this case, confuses us rejoiners. In fact, I was going to do something entirely different today about left-wing bubbles, but that can wait until next week. Because out today are the net migration figures to the UK. And there was quite a bit of scaremongering in advance of those figures being released. Even Sky's Kay Burley couldn't resist getting in on the act.
Official figures are expected to show that net migration to the UK has hit close to 1 million people, which would be a record high.
As it was, the figure wasn't quite that high, a little over half that, in fact. Net migration to the UK stood at 606,000 in 2022. You can pause the screen here for all the details, but as you can see, we've lost a huge portion of our friends from the EU. But that figure's been more than compensated for by those arriving in the UK from non-EU countries. And yes, as you can see, the change started when Brexit was finally implemented in 2020. Now, we're constantly being told from all quarters of the media that migration to the UK is too high. Now, we know there are some people who would prefer us to pull up the drawbridge entirely. And GB News, of course, were quick to conflate the issue of legal migration to the UK with asylum seekers arriving on boats. Small boats, of course, desperate to create the impression in their viewers' mind that the only people trying to get into Britain are scrounging lowlifes who want to take. And as we know all too well, that message has sadly penetrated the British psyche to such an extent that, well, Brexit. And you do have to ask yourself why Sky News felt that they'd get a representative view from the British people by visiting Thanet, a Tory marginal with a pretty much single take on the issue of immigration. Well, that remains a mystery.
More and more are coming in, and they're coming in thousands, and it's making it harder for people like me to find anywhere to live.
But has immigration to the UK really prevented these patriotic Brits from pursuing their chosen careers as neuroscientists and web designers? Are they scuttling off with our jobs and homes? And do they take more than they give?
If you look at a globe, not the map of the world, but a globe, the British Isles is a tiny, minute part of it. So why is it that most people all want to go there? Africa's enormous. South America's enormous. So why do they all want to come to Europe? They want to come. They're not doing us any favours. They want to come because of what they can get out of it. And yes, I could go further, but I'd probably be arrested if I did. So.
And is it any wonder so many of us think like that, now that the wafer-thin gap between news and opinion has all but disappeared entirely?
If you're earning £25,000 a year, realistically, you are well below the average income, which is over £30,000 a year. You are not going to be a net contributor. Your life may well be improved. You may be doing very useful work. Tax-wise, in terms of the contribution you make financially to the country and the cost you have to other people in this country, you are a net taker, not a net giver. That is the reality, the facts.
Julia, what you're saying simply isn't true. And it's certainly not news. So big up Al Jazeera for this.
In the year to last June, nearly 500,000 people came to the UK on study visas, making them the single largest group of migrants. They brought with them more than 130,000 dependents, a figure 8 times higher than 3 years before. Crucially, they contributed more than $50 billion to the UK economy, according to a recent report.
The report shows quite clearly that even taking into account those costs and the cost of accessing public services, for example, the overall net economic contribution is still overwhelmingly positive. It's over £37 billion a year. I think it's really important that we remain competitive, we remain open to international talent, and that we don't undermine what is actually a real global success story for the UK.
But sadly, Eurosceptic Tories like Sir John Hayes just can't see it, or refuse to. His rhetoric only this morning stoking division, fueling fear, and missing the point entirely that we need migration to the UK now more than ever to fill the gaps in our labour market caused by Brexit that we alone are incapable of doing. It's just a fact. So thank the Lord then for the chair of the International Chamber of Commerce UK, Dr. Paul Dreschler, more than able to counter Hayes' fearmongering.
we're talking about human beings here, we're talking about people, it's worth remembering that every single person living in Britain today is a descendant of an immigrant. Probably more importantly, in the UK population today, there are 10 million people who were born outside the UK. So I think it is incredibly important that we speak about these people with respect and appreciation. And I think there's a real urgency around changing the narrative, which is fundamentally nasty, to one which reflects more, I think, the British people. This is a nation that thrives on diversity of talent. The reason we have 4 of the top 10 universities in the world from the UK is because of the diversity of talent that exists.
And we're firmly with Dr. Paul on this one. And we're encouraged that more and more of us are saying no to the nonsense narrative that anyone who wants to come to our country is threatening our way of life. Here at SMR, we firmly believe the overwhelming majority of them want to enhance it. And thankfully, the facts support us all the way. If you enjoyed this video, visit 16millionrising.co.uk, where you can listen to this week's full radio show for free, support us with a donation, buy us a coffee, or subscribe as an early riser. Back tomorrow.